Hey, you're watching episode 11 here on Al's Canoe, Kalamazoo. We don't have any more excuses to wait on the fiberglassing, so let's go ahead and take the plunge. One coat of epoxy over the bare wood gives a more even saturation for the fiberglass layer, and it reduces bubbles. It also gives a pretty good impression of the final color. For this boat, we used a single sheet of fiberglass that's 60 inches wide. We'll add more to the stems later. I mentioned my cousin Luke in a previous episode when he came by to help me cut boards into strips. Today he's back to help me again, and this process would be nearly impossible without the extra set of hands. A paintbrush works well to flatten out the wrinkles in the sheet and helps it conform to the shape of the boat. The first pour of epoxy was about a third of the way up the boat, and we continued towards the stem. Then we went back to our starting point and worked our way towards the opposite end. We used simple plastic scrapers to spread out the resin and gradually saturate all of the fiberglass. About 20 minutes after putting the epoxy on is a good time to go back through and scrape off all of the excess. Okay, the epoxy is on, the fiberglass is on. It's been sitting for maybe half an hour since we applied it, maybe 45 minutes. Some drips, some wet spots. You can see the weave of the fabric pretty easily right now, which is what you expect. And then we'll come back in a few hours and we'll do another coat, fill that weave in, and hopefully that'll look nice. We have to do at least one more, probably two after that, just to show what I've got going on here. Fiberglass is coming over the end pretty well, and I get maybe a third of the way down before I have to start just kind of folding it up. And then I'll probably go over this and maybe put another narrow strip of fiberglass over the top of it and then fade that in. But for now, we got the sides all covered. Between the first and second coat is a good time to trim off all the extra fabric. Here's what happens when the epoxy goes exothermic and starts to go off. That's the first roller that I used, turned into a bunch of flaming foam. And this one's starting to smoke up. You can hear it sizzling actually. Okay, the second coat is on. Weave is still pretty visible, so it's going to take a little bit more to fill that in. Maybe I'm just not getting enough material on there with these foam rollers. But I can tell it's an improvement. I'm getting a little bit more of a mirror effect off the top of the boat. So that's kind of fun. And it's better. It's a more even coat. So we'll let that dry, give it a few hours, and then hit it again. On day one of the fiberglassing, we got the entire outer hull fiberglass and we put a coat of epoxy through that and then added two more coats after that. I would have done a 4th coat, but I actually ran out of epoxy, so I had to order some more. When you leave it for, more than a few hours, you kind of have to wait until that epoxy fully cures, and then you need to sand it down well before you add any other layers of epoxy on top of that. So my plan for today, I've already started, but I'm going to finish out the sanding all the way around the outside of the boat, and then we're also going to add a narrow strip of fiberglass over the outer stems. The first sheet of fiberglass we didn't go around that, kind of folded together, and that all got sanded off, so the outer stems are pretty exposed right now. So we'll put another strip over that, epoxy that down good, and that'll be good. And then the rest of the boat, I just plan on doing one more coat on that, so we'll coat the entire thing in one layer, and then the outer stems we'll add a few more coats of epoxy as well. Okay, I've sanded the whole outside with 60 grit on my random orbital. Sanded the whole thing with 120 grit on my straight board. And I think I'm gonna leave it at that. I can always do some more sanding to some finer grits later if I feel like it. But to a point where I feel comfortable taking it off the forms. I've already cheated ahead a little bit and took a couple of forms out already. Pretty fun to see that. And I also built a couple of little carpet slings to flip the boat over onto. Straight up, not as hard as you can. Thanks for watching Al's Canoe, Kalamazoo. Now that the boat is off the framework, it can finally get moved out of the garage and into the main facility, just as soon as Al confirms that there's a spot available. Please subscribe for future episodes, hit the like button, and leave a comment below.